Okay, it looks like we have people joining us. As people are joining, I'll give you one more minute before we get started. Thank you for everybody joining us today. People keep trickling in. This is wonderful. I know that they will continue to trickle in as we start as well. So thank you for being here today. All right, we have a lot to cover today, so I'm going to get started. Hi, and thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Diane Perry. I am one of the family resource specialists at the Peel Center, and I work out of our Philadelphia office. And I have my colleague here today who's going to be co-presenting. Are you there, Kelly?
I am, in fact. Good day, everyone. Delighted to have you with us. I'm the Family to Family Health Information Center Coordinator. My name is Kelly King. I'm a middle-aged white woman with long dark hair, and I'm wearing a blouse of green, blue, and black striped pattern. So welcome.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you for that great reminder. I am a white woman wearing glasses with probably like black and blonde hair lights in my hair, and I'm also wearing a black top. All right. During our time here together, please keep yourself muted unless we call on you to be able to speak if we get to that point. We hope to have questions at the end that we can interact with you, but throughout the presentation, we will be, looking at the chat and maybe bring in some answers as we go along. But for the most part, we will do your questions towards the end. So feel free to use the chat while making any comments or questions throughout. And yes, so during the last 10 minutes, we will be doing that. And just so you know, since this is being recorded currently right now, when we do the questions and comments, we will stop that recording so that we can do those question answer session. And while we do that, please try and refrain from disclosing any personal details and feel free. We will have contact information in there. You can contact either Kelly or I directly. Our emails will be provided at the end. And you could also go to the Peel website and put in a request through our email box, our info box. And of course, you can always call us as well. If anybody needs help turning on closed captioning, please let us know as well. I'll pause for a second. Okay. All right. So just so you know you're in the right spot today, you are with the Peel Center, and we will be presenting on the IEP, knowing your rights to the procedural safeguards. So that is the document that you get at your IEP meeting that gives you all your rights that you have. And Kelly and I will go through all of them today. We will have some videos throughout as well, which are also available on the Peel Center's website as well. So you can see all of the videos. We're only going to show you a few of them today. Our mission. So here at the Peel Center, we are here to educate and empower families to ensure that children, youth, and young adults with disabilities and special healthcare needs lead rich, active lives as full members of their schools and communities. And the Peel Center is statewide. And as I stated earlier, I work out of the Philadelphia office, but we also have a Pittsburgh office, and then we have a spattering of our colleagues throughout the state. So in the middle, up top, like all over. So we're able to, that's how we're able to cover the whole state. And my role as a family resource specialist is to provide that one-on-one assistance for families, helping them navigate special education system, understanding your rights, processes, your procedural safeguards. And that's why we're here today. So feel free to contact us at any time to help you. And Kelly's role, do you want to talk a minute, Kelly, about your particular role as the family-to-family health coordinator?
Sure. So I really help the same population that we serve around educational issues, around issues that are related to healthcare. And the funding that we receive to do that comes from the top, from the Maternal and Child Health Bureau. And so their perception of healthcare is that if you've got a child, a young person with a disability, everything is healthcare. So it runs from, paying for things, funding things, community relationships and support. So that can be with any type of medical or mental health or behavioral health or educational provider, as well as transition and concepts of medical home. You name it, it falls under healthcare. So that's what we do.
Thank you, Kelly. And the work that I do is covered under the PTI, which is a Parent Training and Information Center. And we're federally mandated in IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and we're also federally funded. So all the services that we offer are at no cost to the families and youth. So our objectives today are mainly two. We believe that you will be able to talk in your own words about the rights of families and students through reviewing these procedural safeguards, which is under IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And you will also be able to identify dispute resolution processes and alternative dispute resolutions. And we will talk further about that. And you will be able to identify that as we move through our presentation here today. So I hope you're all ready to hear, ready to learn your rights in the IEP process through these procedural safeguards. So we're just going to get right into it. Number one, this is your right to participate. So every family member, parent, must be given opportunities to participate in their IEPs, in their IEP team meetings, and in any other way that we're going to talk about as well as we go through this. So, we have found sometimes too often decisions and planning are done sometimes in the absence of the parents. Unfortunately, parents must be active about their advocacy for their child. I also wear that hat of a parent, so I also have navigated all of this, and I'm just always honored, and I love talking to families to be able to share my knowledge and my expertise throughout what I've learned for my son. He's now 29, but so all my experiences, but I also understand and recognize how important it was to advocate for him. And so I feel it's really important that families understand their rights as well as you advocate for your child. And sometimes we do need to remind the districts about, our voice as a parent and a family member in our meetings. And when you're going through that process, when you're at the IEP meeting, you have the right to participate in so many ways. There's the evaluation and assessments, and we'll get into more details with that too. But really, you have the right to participate in knowing and understanding what they are. What's going on with that? One of your rights will be to give permission. We'll get to that in a second. But all of this is in relationship to your child and ensuring that they receive a free, appropriate public education, and not only about educational placement, but also their activities throughout, during any type of school-sponsored activity. So extracurricular activities, all of that. So all of your rights, so you have all of that to participate and to discuss and to ensure that your child is receiving that free, appropriate public education. And also, you also have the right to participate and be informed about all other program options and alternatives, both public and non-public. Okay. Number two, you have the right to receive what's called a prior written notice. And sometimes you'll see the acronym PWN, prior written notice. Okay. And you have the right to receive that in your native language. So when school districts initiate a change, possibly that they think they need to relook at, does your child still qualify for the IEP, for the services that they're receiving? You need to receive the prior written notice. If they're ready to do any type of assessments or evaluations, you need to receive this prior written notice. Any type of change in educational placement in your child's education, special education, you need to receive the prior written notice. Now, in Pennsylvania, it is also called the NORA, Notice of Recommended Educational Placement. So on the top of the form, a lot of times you will see both words or all of those words, NORA / prior written notice. And on there, they check off what is the action that they're taking on that prior written notice. So it's really important to know, again, this is one of your rights that you get to participate and see, okay, what is it that they want to do? Because then what you will do then is sign that prior written notice and or NORA, giving permission or not giving permission. Okay.
Diane, I just wanted to add that, there are a lot of times when the family and the school district disagree, because the families do have a right to be involved in the decision-making process. And sometimes they want something that the school doesn't want to provide. So that would be another time when, asking for the prior written notice to state disagreement would be very helpful to a parent, but something they don't know that it may be a good idea to ask for.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kelly. So you have the right to consent. And I kind of alluded to this earlier, that you must provide informed written consent before your child is evaluated or provided any services, or before any change in those special education services that may occur. Now, the key element here is informed consent. So that family members and parents need to provide that you have been given the range of options. Okay, so it's not a one size fits all. The district cannot say, this is it. No, you should have this range of options. Okay, and it's okay to ask questions, because again, your consent needs to be informed. And if you need to be an informed, and that's in IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, you need to be informed decision makers. And anybody who ever attends any of my trainings, you'll hear that I repeat that a lot. Parents need to be informed decision makers, which means having this informed consent and asking questions is fine. And also in your own language. So if English is not your first language, you want to be sure that you are asking for any of this in your native language as well, or any other type of mode of communication that a parent or family member may have. If they have a disability themselves and they need some type of accommodation, they can request it that way as well. Okay. Anything you wanted to add for that? I think I captured everything on that one. Okay. You also have the right to refuse to give consent. So parents may refuse to consent for an assessment or evaluation. Okay. There maybe you don't feel that it's necessary. Maybe, whatever it might be, but you have the right to refuse that consent as well. And placement of your child in special education, you have the right to refuse that as well. And what that means, and we'll get into some of your other procedural safeguards of what you can take, what actions you can take if you do refuse. But again, what you need to do is you need to look at that prior written notice, NORAP, and go to the back pages, whatever, and it shows you and tells you on there exactly, if you agree or if you disagree. And if you disagree, what are all your options? Okay. And there are options like informal meeting, mediation, and due process. And we'll talk a little bit further about those as well as we get on with our presentation. Okay. What we're going to show you here is one of our videos. And like I said, they are available on our website. And in addition to that, when I start to show the video, in the beginning, it doesn't have any sound. It kind of just goes through that introduction a little bit. So give it a couple seconds before, you actually hear it. But as soon as you see the two ladies speaking, that's when you should definitely be hearing it. So I tried this earlier, so hopefully it will work here too.
Maria, I'm so glad you could meet me for coffee this morning. I need to ask you about this letter I received from Alex's teacher yesterday.
It looks like the school wants to evaluate Alex to see if he needs special education services. You did tell me that he's been struggling in school lately.
Yes, schoolwork has always been difficult for Alex, but this year's been even more challenging. And Mr. Stevens said that Alex is having a tough time focusing in class, and he's not always turning his homework in.
That's probably why he sent you this form from the school district. It's called a permission to evaluate consent form. Schools use this form when they want to evaluate a child to see if he needs special education services. Before a school can begin evaluating Alex, they must first get your consent in writing. So do you see this section here? You just need to check the box that says you're going to give your consent for the evaluation. Then sign the form and return it to Alex's teacher.
Well, okay, I'm just not sure I'm ready for all of this.
Yeah, I understand. When our school district first began to evaluate Eddie's speech and language issues, I remember feeling very overwhelmed and scared. But keep in mind, you do have the right to refuse consent. You can check the option right here to indicate you don't want to have Alex evaluated. That is your right under Pennsylvania law.
Well, what do you mean it's my right?
Well, there's something in the state of Pennsylvania called the Procedural Safeguards. You should have received a copy of this document along with the permission to evaluate form.
I did get another document. It was really thick and seemed pretty technical.
Yeah. That sounds like the Procedural Safeguards Notice.
Yeah.
It documents the legal rights of parents whose children receive special education in Pennsylvania. One of those rights is the opportunity to give your consent or refuse to give your consent for things like educational evaluations.
I see. Well, it's good to know that parents have rights when it comes to their children's special education.
I agree. So, how about this permission to evaluate form?
I suppose it wouldn't hurt to have Alex evaluated. Maybe then we can begin to understand why he's struggling so much in school. Thanks for your help, Maria. It's nice to know that there's somebody here that understands.
Okay, so now it's time to pass this to Kelly. Go ahead, Kelly. You can keep us going.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Diane. I just wanted to mention one thing with regard to the NORA, because there was a question, and this is not in fact related, and Cindy answered that in the chat. Thanks for catching that for us, Cindy. But on the NORA, you do have the right to say, yes, I agree with these things, and then but I don't agree with these things. And that doesn't mean you have to do anything about it, but it's nice to have that documented. But you could do something about that if you disagreed. So know that it's not just one blank slate. I have to take it all or nothing. You can check that you agree, but that you disagree with some other aspect. So just be aware of that. So I wanted to talk to you about that evaluation. So the ladies in the video addressed an assessment or an evaluation of students for special education services. But when that's being done, it's really important that that be done in a way that doesn't discriminate against that child because of, you know, anything about them, their language, the fact that they have a visual impairment or a hearing issue, or because they're from another culture, or that their family primarily speaks another language. Those assessments need to be done in a way that enable the evaluator to see what the strengths and the real skills of that student are. So the tools that they use may be different, and the evaluator, it may be important that they find an evaluator who's got some sensitivity or experience, or is from that culture or that background perhaps. So just understand that that can't be discriminatory. And you know, if you are facing an evaluation for your child, do ask those questions if there are concerns about anything that could make the evaluation less than the best for your student. Go ahead, please. And another video here again. Remember, the first couple of minutes are going to be quiet. So.
Thank you so much for meeting me, Principal Barnes.
No problem, Ms. Rodriguez. What can I do for you?
Well, as you know, Eddie's reevaluation is coming up, and I have a few questions I hope you can answer.
Certainly. Go ahead.
When Eddie was first evaluated, he was allowed to complete all of the assessments in Spanish. Our family is from Puerto Rico, and Spanish is our native language. I know that Eddie's language and speech is starting to improve, but I'm still not sure he's ready for a test in English.
Sure. Well, I have his last evaluation report right here. Let's take a look. Yes, I see that the last evaluation was done in Spanish.
Yes, yes. And the tester was fluent in Spanish, which really seemed to put Eddie at ease.
Yes. So it sounds like you would like for the upcoming reevaluation to be done in Spanish as well.
I would. Eddie's English has improved a lot since he started school, but Spanish is still his first language. I think he would be more comfortable and successful if he could take the assessment in his native language.
Certainly, certainly. Well, we take the federal and the state requirements regarding non-discriminatory assessment very seriously. Our goal is to assess the students using methods that respect their cultural background. Now, it's better for the student, and it's your right. So yes, we will definitely make sure that the test is done in Spanish again this time.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Barnes. You know, I'm actually looking forward to reading Eddie's evaluation report this time. We have seen great progress since he started receiving special education services, and I just bet the evaluation report will really reflect that.
Well, we're quite pleased with Eddie's progress as well. Well, it was nice catching up with you, Ms. Rodriguez. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to give me a call.
Thank you.
So we love that Principal Barnes was really open to that discussion, really followed through with the responsibilities. You know, that it would be appropriate to go to a principal, perhaps to a special education director, or to the school psychologist to have that conversation. And we hope it goes as positively as the one in the video did for you. But if not, you know, take it up a notch and ask someone else, because you do have a right for your student to get an appropriate evaluation. So you also, if you get that evaluation done, and for some reason you disagree with it, maybe you disagree in general, maybe there are parts of it that you disagree with, you have the right to ask for something called an independent educational evaluation and or assessment. So what is that? that would be one that's done by somebody who's not paid by the school district to get a second opinion. However, the person that does that has to meet the same criteria that a school district evaluator would have. So you can disagree. You need to put a request in writing to ask the school to pay for an independent educational assessment or evaluation. So that's the at public expense, asking them to pay for it. You can simply write it the way we have it here. I would like, I disagree with the district's evaluation and would like to have the school pay for an independent educational evaluation. That can simply say that, or you could say a public expense. So it's a simple in writing to the special education director, school psychologist. It, will really be the decision of the school to decide whether they're going to pay for that or not. But if they don't, we're going to tell you what can happen as a consequence. You are allowed to ask for one IEE to have the school pay for that every time the school district does an evaluation that you disagree with. So say they evaluate your child, it's a speech evaluation and you don't agree with that, you could ask them to pay for another one. If, however, they've already sent you a permission to evaluate form, well, then they get to do theirs first. So you would have to allow them to conduct their evaluation. Of course, we don't want children to have to go through assessment after assessment. We want the school to be able to do a good job, but sometimes they fall short, or you just doesn't capture my child. So you want to ask for this independent one. So there are some technical things about that, which are on the next slide. When you ask, the school has to, and it says without unnecessary delay, either say, yes, we will pay for that independent educational evaluation, or they have to take you to a due process hearing. Now, we're going to talk about due process a little later on, but basically that's like a little court case. It's decided by a hearing officer. Those are often held in, maybe the school has a conference room or something like that. So you would come in there, you may have an attorney, or you may go without an attorney, and the school district will bring their team. In this case, they would be arguing they have to take you to due process if they don't agree with your request. So they would be responsible to defend why their evaluation was good enough. And if they succeed, then you don't get that paid for. If you prevail at that hearing, then they would be responsible to pay for that independent educational evaluation. But, in many instances, the school's willing to do that. They are allowed to ask you why you disagree. You don't have to tell them, or you could just say you disagree in general. But even so, they do have the right to ask you. They also are responsible to tell you a few things. So they have to give you a list of people who meet the school district criteria, and they have to tell you, any criteria that they have. So they could say, you can only spend up to $2,000 for this, or you have to go within 60 miles of the school district's boundaries or something like that. Some criteria that's established. Now, does that mean that you've got a child with some unique situation and that there's somebody who's 62 miles away that's really going to do a great job, but they don't meet the criteria because they're a little too far away? You could go back to the school and ask them to reconsider that criteria, but you should have a list of providers. You're also not obligated to choose from the list the school district provides you. You could go outside of that list, but they still have to meet the criteria unless you get an exception to that. So it's then something that, if that is done, that evaluation goes back to the school district, they pay for that, and they have to consider that then, and how that's handled can be a little differently. They can take that outside evaluation and accept it as their own, or they could, morph it into their type of format. But they absolutely have to consider that outside information. So if yours, the original one that they did, you felt wasn't appropriate, and the one that you get, yours is, spot on with what you believe is appropriate for your child, you can merge those two together, and you are more empowered to move the education forward for the student.
And I think, Kelly, you really captured that in a lot of detail about the IEE. And I know that we have a video coming up, but I'm looking at our time and I want to be able to be mindful of that as we go through, because I know we have a few more procedural safeguards. So I'm just going to ask Sue, our director of training, to put this particular video in the chat as we go through. And again, they are on our website. And in addition to our website, I failed to tell you everybody earlier, that this is recorded and it will be available on our website and on Facebook Live for a period of time. And everyone will get the PowerPoint who registered for this. So I failed to say that in the beginning, but now everybody knows that. So I think we're going to skip this video and go to the next procedural safeguard.
Terrific, but nevertheless, don't hesitate to take advantage of looking at that, particularly if these issues, we've got all of them on there. If any of the issues is particularly of interest to you, definitely go back and take a look at all of those. So then you additionally have a right to confidentiality. So, your information, your personal identifying information, your students' personal identifiable information is something that is protected under our laws. And you also have the right to take a look at all of the educational records that the school accumulates about your student. That should happen without delay, and definitely no less than 45 days. That is one of our FERPA rights. So you ask for the records, you ask to inspect the records, they have to make that available to you. You could get copies, but they could, charge a little bit for those. And if somebody else wants to look at your records, your students' records, say you have somebody working with you, if you give them permission to do that, they're able to do so. But school is responsible then to keep a list of who looked at it and the dates and times and the reason that they did so. Go ahead, please. And again, if you disagree with any of that information, sometimes there are little details that are wrong. Sometimes it's something that's, just erroneous, an error in there that needs to be corrected. And you can certainly ask to do that. You have the right to ask that that be stricken or to be corrected or changed. And the district then can say, well, we don't agree with that. So they have to make a decision. And then if they don't want to make the decision, you can take it a step beyond that. And there's something you could ask for called the records hearing, where that can actually be decided by a third party. Would that be changed or not? So that information is something that you have power over too.
All right, thank you. So I think I'll go ahead here. Yes. So what I want to say about filing a complaint, you have a right to file a complaint with the Bureau of Special Ed, Department of Education. Your IEP, the IEP document, is a legal document. And that legal document means that the school district must follow everything that's outlined on that IEP. Now, there are times that sometimes there are various things that are on that IEP that may not get done or may get overlooked or what have you. You absolutely have the right to file the complaint, and the Department of Education will investigate that. And then you actually get a written report within 60 days from them receiving the complaint. Now, sometimes when I'm talking with families, is this something I can file a complaint? Like they're not sure what actually is something that I can file a complaint. Because there are things that sometimes you just don't agree, which is very different than the district not providing a particular service. So let me give you an example of, maybe your child is in need of receiving speech therapy, and they're supposed to be getting that speech therapy 2 times a week for 30 minutes. And in this world of therapists and teachers being scarce sometimes as far as, live people actually doing this, your child, your speech therapist might have left and they haven't filled that position. And time is ticking away and your child is not getting their speech therapy 30 minutes, 2 times a week. Well, that's adding up, okay? If your child is not receiving that speech therapy, they would then be owed that time, okay? So if the district is not responding to you, if you just happen to find out in the play yard, oh, the speech therapist left, I didn't know that, those kinds of things, you have the right to file a complaint to make sure that that investigator then goes back to when did that speech therapist leave, and then when is that all that, Now, technically your district should be in conversation with you about something like that, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes you also have on your IEP what's called in the back, towards the back of the IEP, the specially designed instruction. There might be various things listed there as far as accommodations for your child or modifications and things like that. If those are not being followed, you have the right to file a complaint, okay? If you're in any way that you're not sure, is this something or whatever, feel free to contact us. Even just shoot us an email. We can always say, yep, and we can also help you file that complaint as well if needed. Did you want to add something, Kelly?
Yeah, I wanted to say, some people really are hesitant to file a complaint when they have a right to. It's wonderful to keep in communication, let the school district know, hey, we seem to miss speech, or I know the speech therapist is on, a break, maternity leave or whatever, how are we going to make that up? So being very proactive, keeping that communication open is really helpful. But a complaint, people think of that as a bad thing, and it really shouldn't be perceived that way. And yet some people are afraid to file the complaint. It should be looked at as kind of a quality improvement thing. The school has an obligation, and we want somebody else looking at that to see if that's correct or not, so that they don't continue to make those mistakes.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Yeah, I like how you said that. It's good. It's good for the teams, first of all, to have that open communication. But again, it's quality improvement, right? So not everybody's perfect, but we want to be able to improve that quality of what the district is providing your child, and you do that as a team member together. You also have the right, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, about filing. You have a right to a mediation. Now, a mediation is, and there's a lot of good information out there about mediation, so I'm just going to give you a snippet here. A mediation is a voluntary process that is attended by an impartial mediator. So this mediator mainly just tries to help the parent and the district come to an agreement. Their job is, I want to get an agreement between the two of you. And so they're not there to make the decision. They're not there to they're only there to write up the agreement, but they are not there to guide one way or another or rule that, none of that. They're there to facilitate that conversation, to keep the communication going so that they can come to an agreement. It is voluntary and free to the parent. And actually, I just realized we needed to update this slide, because just last year, the Department of Education is that they used to not have attorneys involved. You can have an attorney attend your mediation now. All those instructions are on the Office of Dispute Resolution's website, and they will ask you those questions. Do you want to bring an attorney? Now, if the parent wants to bring an attorney, fine, the district will bring theirs too. But if the family does not want to bring an attorney, the district will not bring their attorney. And it just stays as a voluntary process between you and the district, and you work together to that agreement. So I apologize that I did not catch this when I was updating the PowerPoint. So again, mediation, like Kelly said, do you want to file a complaint? You're afraid to. Mediation, do we want to do that? Well, sometimes it is that I say to family, sometimes it's good. If there's something that you're not agreeing on, right? And you just maybe need to have that extra meeting about the specific topic of whatever it is. It's not an IEP meeting. Not all the players are there. You're only there with administration most of the time as a family member. So it's a time to really have another conversation about this issue that you guys just are not agreeing on. And if you really don't want to go through the expense of an attorney, it's another good opportunity to utilize this voluntary free service for families before you even considering the due process, which we'll get to in a second as well. So mediation, we help families get prepared for them. You want to put a statement together and we give you more details around that. Again, the Office of Dispute Resolution, if anybody wants to put their website in the chat, that'd be helpful so that they can go to their website to learn more about mediation too. Did you want to say something, Kelly? I saw you on mute.
Yeah, just, knowing that it's voluntary means, it's voluntary for both of you. So the family can file and the school says, no, thank you, or vice versa. The school can file for mediation. It's voluntary for each of you. So it doesn't, sometimes we have to short circuit that because people don't want to participate in that.
Thank you. You also have the right to what's called a resolution session. Now, the parent can file a due process complaint. So on that NORAP, that prior written notice, your options are mediation and due process. So you can file for a due process complaint by describing the nature of the problem relating to what the district is proposing or refusing to do, as well as describe what they want as the outcome for your child. So you do that on that due process complaint. Once that the district receives the complaint, they are obligated to set up this resolution session, okay? And that's with all the relevant members of the IEP team to see if they can come to an agreement, okay? So kind of similar to a mediation, but not, because you're all of you are together again for this resolution meeting. And this process is put into place to try and resolve the issues before actually going to the hearing. So what happens is the hearing officer is like, come on, you guys, try to resolve this one more time, and the lawyers are involved as well. Let's get this resolved one more time before actually having to go to a hearing for me to decide. Maybe you guys can do it one more time. So the district must do a resolution session, and that occurs before you actually go on to the due process if needed. So 12 is when you're actually going through, you have the right to a due process hearing. So again, if that resolution session is not successful, then you will be given an impartial hearing officer who's going to be making that decision about what the due process complaint is. There is a 2-year timeline from when the parent or district knew or should have known about whatever the issue may be. The parent can bring an attorney, expert witnesses, or anyone who knows about the situation. You can also, as a parent, not bring an attorney and go pro se, which means that you would then be kind of the attorney and the parent. It's very difficult to go through that. There's a lot to do, a lot of paperwork, a lot of documents, and if you are a parent who maybe you are an attorney or about all that paperwork. I am not a paperwork person, so I knew that would not be an option for me, but some parents can do pro se. So I just want to put that out there as well. You will also receive a copy of the transcripts of the hearing. That's an option of how you want to receive them. There is a 45-day timeline to hold a hearing once that resolution session is complete. So most of the hearing officers are pretty quick. Like if that resolution didn't come to anything, they're pretty quick to start setting those dates. But there is, just so you know, this timeline. And if the parent prevails, they may be rewarded attorney fees. So that is an option that would be available in that hearing officer's decision. Okay, and that's how that would happen. Again, we are not lawyers at the Appeal Center. So I need to put that very clear. We are not lawyers. A lot of times when it gets to the due process hearing, I'll say to families, I can support you emotionally and through school and still all the different questions. But once you get into this due process, I'm not a lawyer and I don't even try to pretend that I am one, but they are there to help you and guide you through all of those questions and guidance through all of that. So, okay. Is this me still?
Yep.
I think I, all right. Yes, so this is me. You have the right to stay in your current program if there is a disagreement about placement. Okay, so if the parent disagrees with the district regarding where their educational placement is to be, okay, whether it's, maybe it's not in their home school, maybe it's in a different classroom, maybe they're staying a different school that's not in, in your district, you have the right to stay put. So when I'm talking to families and they disagree with something on that NORAP or that prior written notice, first of all, you have 10 calendar days to respond, okay? If you don't respond, the district will automatically assume you're agreeant. If you do not, this is where it's really important, you do not agree, you check off that you disagree, but you also have to check off either mediation or due process. That will stop whatever they're recommending and keep the stay put wherever the child is in that placement. They stay put until there is a resolution to the mediation or a resolution to the due process. So if you are in disagreement with that placement, you have the stay put. But again, checking off disagree and mediation or due process keeps you with that stay put. So keep that in mind as you go through. And I do tell families, because a lot of times what I'll hear from families is, I don't agree with it and I'm not going to sign it. And I'm like, whoa, no, you need to sign it, because if you disagree, this is what will keep your child stay put in that option. Okay, so that is what you have the right to have, that in that, and your child stays in that current program.
Wow, what a whirlwind fast track getting through all of those complaint and problematic issues, Diane. Great job. Hey, the one thing I see often that I just want to caution people about is sometimes they get that prior written notice like a month after it's dated. So just be careful to look at the date. You can't use your 10 days to disagree with something if you're getting that dated a month ago. So make sure that it's up to date so that you have time to enact your rights there. And so want to talk about issues around school discipline and alternative placements. Sadly, things happen from time to time with our students. It's really important to know the school discipline procedures and policies. That usually comes in the student handbook that's available on the school website. But with regard to our students who have disabilities, there are specific rules that can apply to them that we want to talk about here. So while a student could still be suspended or placed in one of these alternative settings, that there are some nuances about that are really important for you to know. So if it's less than 10 consecutive days, then there has to be an IEP meeting. So this shouldn't just be decided between you and the principal and discussed. It shouldn't just be, here's this suspension and then you're suspended for 3 days and 3 more days next week. We need to take a look at what's going on here. So definitely call for your IEP meeting to be held and consider that. The team should be discussing the appropriateness of the placement that the student's in, and if a functional behavioral assessment needs to be done, and or if one has been done, is a change warranted in the behavior support plan. So it's great to be really proactive about that if you're seeing issues around school discipline that are related to your student. And the district, wherever the student is at, still has a responsibility to provide a free and appropriate public education. But if your student is suspended, again, they're allowed to suspend them, but there are some nuances with students with intellectual disabilities. If that's the case, any change of placement any suspension is a change of placement. So that's a specific nuance. And remember those big issues, the drugs and serious bodily injury and weapons that often come to the forefront when we're talking about the potential of alternate placements. Got a quick video for you. Go ahead, Diane.
I'm just wondering, because we're getting close, we wanted to
On
give some
time?
time for the questions. Yeah, so I'm thinking, Sue, if you wouldn't mind putting this video in the chat as well. And again, you can look at this video on our website, but we wanted to make sure that I know we only have, I think, one more left, but we do want to get some questions too. So
Sure. And then, when the student has a pattern or they get up to a certain number of days, there's something called a manifestation determination meeting that must be held. They have to decide if that behavior was related to the child's disability or not. And if so, they wouldn't be able to take these steps. But again, that may kick in doing the functional behavioral assessment. If that has been done, then making some changes to the behavior support plan. And they need to look at, was the IEP being followed or not? Because that can certainly lead to some problems. So go ahead, please. And then, if you have a child who is in a private school, the school district still has a responsibility to identify those individuals who have disabilities wherever they're at. So there are ways and processes that they have to follow. We call this child finding the individuals so we can at least offer them services, let you know what your rights are with regard to a student with a disability in school. And they are absolutely not required to provide special education to those students, but they could. And there are some ways that can happen. But there is, they're not entitled to that, though there are some private schools who may offer some things. They're not entitled to that if they're not in a public school. So if you have somebody in a situation like that, don't hesitate to call us and we can help you, discuss that a little bit and consider what the options are if necessary.
okay, so we're going to get into the questions and discussion, but before that, what I would like to do is let you know that funding for our trainings like these are supported by feedback from you. So it is very important that you take a moment right now to scan this QR code and quickly fill out the evaluation for this training. It's really important to us if you could do that. Their directions are there, but you can basically open the camera app on your phone, point the camera at the circle, and then tap the screen to open the page. Now, when I first started trying to do this, sometimes it took me a couple tries. I'm like, oh, there it is. I didn't realize it was going to be so easy. I was thinking this, but that was me, and that's how I am with technology. So we will also be providing the link also for you to be able to fill out the training evaluation. So I believe we will be turning off